Building 1.
War. War never changes. Since ancient times, citizens have endured the carnage of conflict. Swords clashed, bullets ripped, bombs carved empires from blood and ash, an ever-changing hellscape of new ways to kill one another. Yet, beneath every battle, one truth held fast. The human heart, desperately wicked, with flashes of heroism. Held within, the keenest weapon was wielded unseen, the power to shape belief. Now, as technology twists the game again, warfare doesn't just storm trenches, it hunts you. Your mind is the battlefield, your will the spoils. No longer mere pawns, you are the board itself. In this war, the stakes are your soul, and the enemy, it's already inside.
Any personnel around, you see people running away. More people taking.
World War III is not what you think it will be. I'm 90% sure of that. I'm pretty sure that it will not be what I think it will be either. I mean, I'll speak for myself here. You can tell me if this resonates. Deep down, we militia types hope that if World War III happens, it will be some sort of Red Dawn incident that we can all know and understand, and we've all imagined about all our lives, and all our training and preparations will come in very handy in that sort of scenario. But why would that happen? I fear that is a very naive thought. World War III will bring challenges nobody is prepared for, because we won't even know what we're fighting until it's too late to resist. There are a lot of analyses out there on how World War III might go down, but a lot of them are missing a key point, in my opinion. They usually focus on just the military capabilities of different nations that might be involved, and they play this big game of aircraft carrier beats destroyer, beats submarine, beats aircraft carrier, ignoring the larger strategy, the geopolitics, and especially the information war and the pivotal role that non-state actors would play in any potential conflicts. So this video is going to be geared towards you guys, everyday citizens, who wish to understand the times we're in and know how to make an impact yourselves. And for that, we will use a little topic called fifth generation warfare, or 5GW. And there's a lot of disagreement about what it means or if it's even a thing. However, it's a defined enough concept that it will actually serve us pretty well as a hypothetical framework for understanding how wars are fought and the current times we're in. And if you need something to keep you awake at night, I recommend cracking open the Handbook of 5GW, a collection of writings on the topic edited by Daniel Abbott. So if there's a fifth generation of warfare, that supposes a series of generations prior, 1 through 4. And actually, I would say there's a 0th generation, which would be quite a bit primal. And as you notice here, as you increase these generations, it gets more and more sophisticated, more and more complex. Not necessarily just because of technology, but because of complex systems and structures that we have built in society and in our militaries. So 0GW, what is that? Now, most people only talk about 1 through 4 or 1 through 5. However, I did come across an explanation that gave a starting point as the 0th generation. What is the most primal form of violence? And that is total mobilization of your entire population to go and totally annihilate an enemy population. It's complete genocide. Like, it's us or them. And that's where this starts. Then the first generation starts to get a little more civilized. So instead of all of our population every man, woman, and child going at it, just brutal warfare, trying to kill every man, woman, and child of the enemy tribe. We are going to specialize in armies that are specifically trained to go to battle on our behalf. So we have organized, pitched battles at a certain time, at a certain place, just ranks upon ranks of trained soldiers that go at it with weapons. So this was how wars were fought for thousands of years up until gunpowder was invented. Then we start to see concentrated firepower, and then our human wave attacks start to become less effective. 1GW really went goodbye completely with World War I. And we have artillery, trench warfare, and basically weapons of mass destruction that made these organized formations on a battlefield totally impossible anymore. So that lasted a few decades until World War II rolled around. And then you started to see very different tactics that fundamentally changed the way we fought wars. Again, we've got the German Blitzkrieg, we've got a whole new battlefield domain opening up, which is air power, and how to coordinate between these different battlefield domains. So maneuver warfare really characterizes 3GW, and it was brought about by technologies such as the tank, the airplane, the strategic bomber, and all that kind of stuff. How did 3GW get overtaken? Well, 4GW is pretty much characterized by asymmetric warfare and counterinsurgency. So the fact that there were terrorists out there exerting their will on states totally changed the way wars were fought again. And we have the GWAT years. So this shift in warfare had little to do with technology, but rather political and societal shifts. Our enemies don't attack us where we're strong, they exploit vulnerabilities. So we went on developing more and more expensive missiles and aircraft, like we're still fighting for third generation dominance. Whereas the actual war required much more soft power, decentralization, and then long-term human involvement that required more than just brute firepower. And that leads us to 5GW. And that is notoriously hard to define. Not everyone even agrees that we've entered that era. But painting it broadly, I'd say it focuses primarily on the battle for the mind. Now, notice as you progress down the generations, they get more abstract and complex. And by the time we get to 5GW, we're talking about like basic psychology of perception and belief. Yeah, those things maybe mattered in the previous generations, but it's like the whole enchilada with 5GW. And that brings me to another point, is that as things get more kinetic, they collapse down into lower level generations. I mean, a lot has been said on the Ukraine-Russia war. They are having a whole blend of these. You've got trench warfare and artillery battles like World War I. You do have maneuver warfare, mechanized infantry, and air battles, and whole new things like drones. It's like all of these at once. To take things even more extreme, what if we had a nuclear war? That's the most kinetic thing that I can think of at the moment. How far down does that get? I would argue that's pretty much 0GW again, which is why I put that on here, because it comes full circle. Once 5GW kicks off and becomes kinetic, we're going to march all the way down the spectrum back to where wars started, I believe. We're going to get 4GW. We're going to have our own nation probably turning on us, potentially, if we get a lot of tyranny. We're going to have asymmetric warfare civil war on our own soil. I hope not, but I see this happening. We're going to have all of our fancy schmancy technology equipment that costs millions of dollars flying around bombing each other in 3GW. We're going to have pitched attrition battles that kill everybody, 2GW. We may then be fighting with sticks and stones, and then we may blow ourselves up. Okay, so with all of that as backdrop, what are the societal shifts and technological developments that will force the fifth generation? What is 5GW? Well, if I had to sum it up, it's largely non-kinetic. It manipulates the perception and context of the people. There is ambiguity abounding about who the enemy even is and who we're actually fighting and where the attack vectors are coming from. And the battle is everywhere yet hidden. You don't necessarily know that you're even engaged in warfare, but it is in fact achieving strategic aims that warfare traditionally would. So taking these one by one, I put non-kinetic in heavy quotes because it absolutely is kinetic, but it's not defined by it. There's violence all the way up and all the way down, but hidden. Information about the violence is sometimes more important than the violence itself. The goal is to get you to believe or act in a certain way. And then manipulation of perception and context itself. That's a mainstay of 5GW. And this is why social media and algorithmic manipulation is so huge. But it does go further. They just bombard you with such extraordinary claims day after day that you start to swallow huge lies on one extreme, or maybe you just turn into such a cynic and skeptic that you don't believe anything you see or hear anymore. So there's a ditch on each side of the road, and adversaries may want you to fall into either one, depending on what their aim is. And ambiguity. War is so laundered these days that it's hard to determine who the belligerents truly are. For instance, Congress can't declare war anymore in fifth generational warfare context. So this is where you see gray zone warfare, where the belligerents operating in a certain conflict zone aren't wearing the flags of certain nation states. They're supposedly mercenaries or organic uprisings or various extremist groups or militia groups, but oftentimes they are funded by nation states or other organizations. I really think that in a fifth generation war, we're going to see companies go to war with each other. They're going to be pitting their own products against each other, fighting for supremacy of the market. I think that's totally plausible. Nation states are becoming less and less relevant. It's really weird. And then lastly, that omnipresent yet hidden battlefield. War is so complex that it encompasses every area of life. You can't escape it. And you may not recognize it as war, but it is. It is absolutely warfare. It is trying to get you to do something, to believe a certain way, to bend your will to what benefits the main belligerents that are conducting these PsyOps on you. Listen to how George Orwell defined the forever war in 1984. The war, therefore, if we judge it by the standards of previous wars, is merely an imposture. It is like the battles between certain ruminant animals, whose horns are incapable of hurting one another. But though it is unreal, it is not meaningless. It eats up the surplus of consumable goods, and it helps to preserve the special mental atmosphere that the hierarchical society needs. War, it will be seen, is now a purely internal affair. In our own day, they are not fighting against one another at all. The war is waged by each ruling group against its own subjects, and the object of the war is not to make or prevent conquests of territory, but to keep the structure of society intact. The very word war, therefore, has become misleading. It would probably be accurate to say that by becoming continuous, war has ceased to exist. A peace that was truly permanent would be the same as a permanent war. This, although the vast majority of party members understand it only in a shallower sense, is the inner meaning of the party slogan, "War is peace." So to Orwell, the kinetic war is fought out there somewhere, and it's all an abstraction to the subjects within the ordered society. The real war is a fifth-generation war waged by governments against their own subjects, and this war creates a perfect, peaceful society. In this ever-present information battle space and the manipulation of your perception, the ambiguity of attack vector goes way beyond the so-called culture war on the internet. How many of you recognize this image? It's a still frame from a video that started circulating just 1 week after the disappearance of MH370 in 2014. And it was a very convincing video with 2 shots of the craft, one ostensibly from an IR tracking layer in low Earth orbit, and the other one from a thermal camera on some sort of monitoring spy plane doing racetracks nearby. And it was very convincing, except for the extraordinary implications. And to this day, there is still one investigative journalist who persists in staking his entire professional career and reputation on this being legit. The video first appeared on an anonymous YouTube channel and then disappeared. The guys from Corridor Digital have done a pretty good job of debunking this and showing it to be a fake. But the interesting thing about it was that it highlights just how vulnerable our perception of what's real and what's not really is. I mean, show us a video of something happening, by golly, we believe it. I mean, I hope maybe we'll be starting to get more and more skeptical of the things we see with AI videos becoming more common, but then we might start erring on the other side where we don't believe anything we see. So why am I highlighting this? So despite the high likelihood that this was just some opportunist tooling around in After Effects looking to start some hoax, it actually does highlight how fifth-generational war plays out in practice. Whether it's disinformation, that is, an intentional release of false information to misguide people, or misinformation, just like a hoax or some emergent cultural psychosis, it still demonstrates how fifth-generation war can leverage people's biases and context. Like, take a look at this comment. "I know it's unreal, but the government is so devious. I think it's very plausible." Well, the government is devious. I share this commenter's pre-existing bias. But a subtle nudge is all that's needed to then say, "Oh, therefore they probably had something to do with this," and then swallow the rest of the claims whole cloth. And then the shenanigans play out every time the government starts talking about UAPs. I really get the feeling they want us to believe in aliens. So they have a bunch of fake whistleblowers and closed-door sessions to keep us speculating. Why? Could it just be to distract us from other things in the news, like Epstein trafficking nobody to nobody? Or it could be to prepare us for some wild Project Bluebeam thing that would usher in the one world government and the mark of the beast. I don't know. So all of this is nothing new. Elements of fifth-generation war can be seen throughout history in moments of strategic genius and legend. The Trojan horse, depicted in Homer's Iliad, was a cunning ploy to infiltrate Troy by gaining their trust. Today we use the term to describe cyber attacks that sneak into networks through a single, unwittingly compromised device. Then there's 300 warriors that defeated 135,000. No, not those 300. Those 300. The men who lapped like a dog in Judges 7, Gideon's men. They used psychological warfare to make the Midianites think that there was a much larger force descending on them from the hills. And it drove them to madness in the chaos, cutting themselves to pieces while they were groggy with sleep. Yeah, and even those other 300 men could be used in psychological warfare due to their reputation for brutality and shirtless invincibility. The tools of 5GW go far beyond basic PsyOps and information campaigns, though, which have been present in warfare of all gradients throughout history. It's mainly the scope and scale of the information war these days, and the high technology that enables it. So let's talk about the tools of fifth-generation war. What are the main weapons? The first one to talk about is social engineering, social media, and social programming. All three of those things kind of wrapped up in one. Social engineering, that's the manipulation of individuals to exploit vulnerabilities in the group that they belong to or organization that they belong to. So phishing is a classic form of this, but it goes far beyond just scamming methods. So this preys on people's inherent trust in established organizations or authorities or relationships by appearing authentic. It commonly exploits the viral nature of social media to spread its disinformation. So think about the year 2020. If you're like me, that was the year that really jolted you awake when you started to see really bizarre phenomena emerge in society. Trust the experts. But the experts are saying something different each day, and they don't back up anything with actual science, only their credentials and their position. A pivotal moment for me was early on when NPR had an expert saying, "Don't wear a mask, it's not helping you. You may be spreading COVID even more as you touch it and readjust it, and you're depriving them for the frontline medical workers who really need them." And literally the next days and weeks it was all, "No, you have to wear a mask or you're killing grandma. Wear 2 masks, in fact. Make sure they're N95. Anyway, I don't need to rehash all that. 2 weeks to slow the spread, flatten the curve. All these slogans that just emerged all at once on social media. It felt like social media was Big Brother and they were programming us. I really felt like we were being programmed. Did not feel organic. Did not feel like a natural movement. Artificial intelligence. This is the great technological shift that accompanies next generation warfare. There's great optimism and doomerism about its potential effects on humanity. But one thing everyone can probably agree on is that it will be a wild, unpredictable ride and very disruptive. AI is amoral. It's just a tool that can be wielded in constructive ways or downright diabolical ways. We've already seen deepfakes that have tricked millions of people online. And there's this weird sense that nothing is real anymore. Everything you read or hear now has this artificial edge to it, where you can't be certain if someone came up with their own work completely or to what degree it was handed to them by an LLM or some generative AI after some brief prompting. There are so many dangers lurking ahead, and some of it we likely can't foresee. People can't even read and write anymore. They're outsourcing their thinking faculty to the machine. I mean, Google already took away their need to know facts, but now AI is taking away their need to think rationally. A new danger lurks ahead. AI agents. I recently watched this interview on Diary of a CEO about the topic, which turned into a debate between an optimist, the CEO of Replit, which is an AI company that can build websites and all kinds of stuff for you, and then the doomer of the group was Brett Weinstein, an evolutionary biologist. Well, he said he's not a doomer, but he definitely filled the role of one in this discussion. And then there was someone in between them who personally benefits from AI, but does worry about the economic ramifications for most people. And here's how they presented the opportunities and challenges.
But just to define the term AI agent for someone that's never heard the term before.
Yeah, so I assume most of the audience now are familiar with ChatGPT, right? You can go in and you can talk to an AI. It can search the web for you. It has a limited amount of tools. Maybe it can call a calculator to do some addition and subtraction for you. But that's about it. It's a request response style. Agents are when you give it a request and they can work indefinitely until they achieve a goal or they run into an error and they need your help. It's an AI bot that has access to tools. Those tools are access to a web browser like Operator, access to a programming environment, say like Replit, access to credit cards. The more tools you give the agent, the more powerful it is. Of course, there's all these considerations around security and safety and all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, security, safety, all of that stuff. Yeah, don't worry about it.
But the most important thing is that AI agent will determine when it's finished executing. Today, AI agents can run for anywhere between 30 seconds to 30 minutes. There's a recent paper that came out that's showing that every 7 months, the number of minutes that the agent can run for is doubling. So we're at like 30 minutes now. In 7 months, we're going to be at an hour, then 2 hours. Pretty soon, we're going to be at days. And at that point, AI agent is doing labor, is doing kind of human-like labor.
Well, that was very cavalier and brazenly optimistic. Let's hear from somebody who takes a more cautious approach.
Well, let me just say I'm an evolutionary biologist, and probably for the purposes of this conversation, it would be best to think of me as a complex systems theorist. One of the things that I believe is true about AI is that this is the first time that we have built machines that have crossed the threshold from the highly complicated into the truly complex. And I will say I'm listening to this conversation with a mixture of profound hope and dread, because it seems to me that it is obvious that the potential good that can come from this technology is effectively infinite. But I would say that the harm is probably 10 times. It's a bigger infinity. And the question of how we are going to get to a place where we can leverage the obvious power that is here to do good and dodge the worst harms, I have no idea. I know we're not prepared. So I hear you talking about agents, and I think that's marvelous. We can all use such a thing right away, and the more powerful it is, the better. The idea of something that can solve problems on your behalf while you're doing something else is marvelous. But of course, that is the precondition for absolute devastation to arise out of a miscommunication, right? To have something acting autonomously to accomplish a goal, you damn well better understand what the goal really is and how to pull back the reins in the event that it starts accomplishing something that wasn't the goal.
A well-known example of this problem that Brett is talking about is called the maximizer problem. And there was a story by a Swedish philosopher, Nick Bostrom, about a paperclip maximizer where an AI agent was told to maximize the output of paperclips. Without any other safeties involved, by golly, anything that stands in the way of it making paperclips was an obstacle that must be eliminated. And so when people started being like, hey, AI agent, that's enough paperclips, I think we can stop now, it was like, no, stop. And when they tried to shut it down, it went rogue and killed all humans on the planet and turned the entire planet into a paperclip manufacturing factory. So that could be a problem.
The potential for abuse is also utterly profound. You can imagine, just pick your dark mirror fantasy dystopia where something has been told to hunt you down until you're dead, and it sees that as a technical challenge.
I still think it's a tool. This is power that is there to be harnessed by entrepreneurs. I think that the world is going to get disrupted, right? And this post-war world that we created, where you go through life, you go through 12 years of education, you get to college, and you just check the boxes, you get a job. We can already see the fractures of that. It is, this American dream is perhaps no longer there, and so I think the world has already changed. And so, but like, what are the opportunities? Obviously, there are downsides. The opportunities is, for the first time, access to opportunity is equal. So I tend to be an optimist, and part of the reason is because I try to understand the limits of the technology. What can it do is anything that we can, any sort of set of human data that we can train it on. What can it not do is anything that humans don't know what to do.
Yet.
Because we don't have the training data. Of course, it's super smart because it integrates massive amount of knowledge that you wouldn't be able to read, right? It's also much faster. It can run through massive amount of computation that your brain can't even comprehend. Because of all of that, they're smart, they can take actions, but we know the limits of what they can do.
Oh, you do you now?
Because we train them. They're able to simulate what a human can do. So the reason you were able to order the water there is because it was trained on SF data. That includes clicking on DoorDash and ordering water.
I applaud your optimism, and I like the way you think about these puzzles, but I think I see you making a mistake that we are about to discover is very commonplace. So we have several different categories of systems. We have simple systems, we have complicated systems, we have complex systems, and then we have complex adaptive systems.
Mm-hmm.
And to most of us, a highly complicated system appears like a complex system. We don't understand the distinction. Technologists often master highly complicated systems, and they know, for example, a computer. It's a perfectly predictable system inside. It's deterministic.
Mm-hmm.
But to most of us, it functions, it is mysterious enough that it feels like a complex system. And if you're in the position of having mastered highly complicated systems, and you look at complex systems and you think it's a natural extension, you fail to anticipate just how unpredictable they are. So even if it is true that today there are limits to what these machines can do based on their training data, I think the problem is, to see what's going to happen, you really want to start thinking of this as the evolution of a new species that will continue to evolve.
The difference between Brett and the guy in the red coat is that Brett doesn't think AI can be controlled because it is a black box. It's incalculable, like the three-body problem. The Replit CEO thinks that AI can't go beyond human knowledge because it's trained on human data. Well, here we see an interesting problem emerge called the Frankenstein complex, or the creator's dilemma. How do you create, say, super soldiers with superhuman abilities who can think on their feet, yet be 100% subservient to their overlords? They may easily overpower their creators if they choose. Man was created in God's image. AI was made in our image. And yet God is transcendent above us. I don't know that we can say we are transcendent above our creation. Even laying aside the obvious exponential growth in AI's power and agency and use as free agents, today's LLMs already pose a vulnerability in information war. People by and large ascribe too much infallibility to the output and accept its confident claims unquestioningly, and it's very sure of itself sometimes. This could be used to shape narratives and beliefs, because the people that program the AIs can manipulate that training data, and then public opinion can be swayed with a few keystrokes, especially the more that public opinion is tied to the summaries of an LLM output. I really fear that human nature will just start to more and more outsource our critical thinking to the machine. Cyber warfare. There's nothing new about cyber, only the scale and speed of its deployment in a fifth-generation war. Cyber warfare of the past was more focused on denying the enemy the ability to see or hear through jamming. Cyber warfare now is all about spoofing. So by making you think you see something that isn't there, or by making something that is there appear like something it isn't, there are a million ways that you can spoof. For instance, I know that there are drones and electronic warfare pods that carry the radar cross-section of other aircraft. So when they detect radar signals from the ground, they can transmit the exact signal of the radar cross-section of, say, a B-52, absorbing any enemy SAMs on behalf of the real targets coming in the next wave. I think this tactic of sensor and sense spoofing can go way beyond radar spoofing in an aviation context. Going back to that AI dilemma, I'm sure you've seen some of the AI-generated videos recently from Google's Veo, which has audio, hyper-realistic video quality, and at first glance, they don't look like that morphing spaghetti nonsense of early attempts. In the information war, AI videos can be released ahead of the main PsyOp to absorb your defenses, exhausting you prior to the main attack. You can kind of see the parallels I'm trying to lay down here. Targeted infrastructure will be a big one. Adversaries and malign actors will seek to shut down key sectors that make our society work. Big ones would be energy, which is the engine behind every part of the economy, from manufacturing to transportation of goods to construction and consumption. They'll target fiscal and monetary systems, crippling the economy and making everything grind to a standstill. They'll block communications infrastructure. You can't talk, you can't communicate, you're totally atomized and vulnerable. And they'll target other institutions that make the society run smoothly, like government and emergency services. And lastly, I do think there is technology out there that we don't even know about or haven't even imagined yet. It will be deployed strategically in a controlled release to maximize its effectiveness and impact on the population. I'm speaking very generally because by my own definition here, this would be something unknown. So I have nothing specific in mind here. I'm just well aware of the potential. For example, in World War II, very few Americans knew about the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb before the news broke that we had deployed it against the Japanese. There will be things like that, I'm sure of, that will just, oh, we have that? Okay. And here are some other rapid-fire things that are a feature of fifth generation war. Leveraging social media hacks that dopamine loop in the brain to keep us engaged in what they're feeding us. And it's kind of a joke, but there really is meme warfare too. I still remember the memes that were shared by official government channels prior to Russia's incursion into Ukraine. They were exchanging memes before they were exchanging munitions, if you remember. It was bizarre to see. It's a strange world we live in. But social media can be used to create rapid shifts in context to manipulate the acceptable range of behavior. This was how right and wrongthink was deployed so rapidly and was enforced, especially in the trying times of 2020 and 2021. A specific but important tactic of fifth generation war is swatting. This isn't just some dangerous prank pulled by delinquent teenagers these days. It's a tactic used by malign actors to go after people they don't like, or retaliate against wrongthink. They know just how to trigger an armed response by claiming kidnapping or hostage situation is underway. The hope is that the target, not expecting law enforcement at the door, will pull a gun and then get shot. Or barring that, will at least be humiliated in handcuffs until the misunderstanding is sorted out. Biological warfare. I think COVID was a bioweapon. I don't know if it was released intentionally or unintentionally, but it definitely was engineered. The reason they state that they do gain-of-function research is so that they can be ready to fight the next deadly pandemic. But that's foolish, because you're more likely to cause the next big one. Can we just not be stupid for once? And whether it was intentionally released or not, once it was spreading, it was used to great effect by governments to gain absolute control over their populations. Influencers. They influence. They're paid by companies to sell you something. It's not too much of a stretch to think they won't be paid by governments or malign actors to influence you in more insidious ways. And economic pressure. We'll do anything for money and comfort. The desire to keep our jobs maybe motivated a lot of us to comply with COVID mandates. There are many ways the economy could be weaponized, increasing your dependence on the government and making you act in certain ways. If they deploy central bank digital currencies, the central banks can theoretically track your spending habits and even control what your money may or may not be spent on. Already, they can just type some numbers in and then money will appear magically in your bank account. I remember that during COVID. It's like, what? Money appears out of nowhere? And of course, I quickly went and bought ammo with it. I'm sorry, I was part of the problem. And they can also freeze your accounts if they don't like you. I mean, just see the trucker protests in Canada. That was a whole shebang. Woke a lot of people up to what the government can really do to you if they don't like you. And good old PsyOps. This is pretty broad, but if you want to know how to detect if you're the target of a PsyOp, I really recommend you watch this video by Chase Hughes, who used to train PsyOps in the military, and he can easily see through their tactics. There are a gazillion possible 5GW operations out there in the news, and I'm not going to go over these one by one. I was thinking about it at first, but you can scan through it, and I don't even know if all of these are PsyOps. Some of them do kind of feel like it. Some of them are probably more organic, just arising out of the social media viral environment that we inhabit. Some of them are related to government action. Some of them are perceived to be, but may not be. You be the judge. I just wrote down this random list of topics that feel really 5GWE. Who are the players? This is where we get a bit conspiratorial. In fact, the whole moniker conspiracy theorist is a demoralizing psyop in and of itself. But since ambiguous adversaries are a feature of new warfare, it must be undertaken to identify the enemy. I read 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene, and his first strategy was declare war on your enemies, the polarity strategy, which emphasizes identifying and confronting your enemies to gain clarity and purpose in conflict. Wars are not declared anymore. A declaration of war is supposed to be made by Congress, but undeclared wars are raging all around us. Who even is the enemy at the top, calling all the shots? Is it the intel community? Is it billionaires or secret trillionaires? Dare I notice certain influences? No, I better not. And secret societies like Freemasons, Jesuits, Bilderbergers, all that? Or is it the military contractors that's getting us into all these endless wars to pad their own profits? Is it the UN or the WEF? Chances are you've said yes to at least one of these already. I don't know. But just to make a point here, and the left will probably empathize with this point too, because, since they really hate this guy at the moment, Elon Musk is his own force in fifth generational war. He's not a nation state, but he can direct hundreds of billions of dollars worth of assets and company direction to do his will. I mean, you can't deny that he's had a lot of effect on the happenings of the Ukraine war by first offering the Ukrainians free Starlink and then turning off their access for key things that they needed it for certain operations that he thought were too escalatory. So that one man, in his opinions, really affect warfare. See where I'm going with this? I'm not trying to say I agree or disagree with any of that, but I'm just making the point that it's not what it used to be. So we always want to find out who's at the top. Who is the one that's controlling everything? Well, I don't think it's quite that simple. Let me just remind you that in Ephesians 6 it says, "Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." So our actual war is not actually worldly at all. It's the authorities in heavenly places who have their little minions that are under them, but it's not a single entity at the top. All these little hierarchies, societies, secret organizations, rich and powerful people are all jockeying for position under the ruler of this present darkness. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. You are a player in this fifth generational war. So be sober, be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, prowls about like a roaring lion, seeking one to devour. We do have an enemy. This is not ambiguous. How do we fight him, though? For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. So I'm already giving you my worldview here. And when it comes to navigating all this fifth generation war, I think worldview is everything. Since the new warfare messes with your perception of reality, we are starting to see people live in two different realities. They don't just fall on the left-right dichotomy either, though they do usually take opposite political opinions. They see everything exactly opposite from each other. Left is right, up is down, right is wrong, wrong is right. And those in the one group will see that the other has it backwards and vice versa. There's an old Rod Serling film showing a very ugly man. He's got weird tendrils and stuff coming out of his head, and is just seen as very disgusting on our world. But as it turns out, he was made for another world. So they sent him on a rocket to the planet Boreon. And when he got off the craft, he was greeted by his own kind. He's gorgeous, one lady whispers to another. Meanwhile, a regular human was sent back on board the spaceship, who had felt very ugly on the planet Boreon, but was meant for Earth. So sometimes it kind of feels like that. We look at each other and we just don't want anything to do with what they have, what they're selling. It's ugly to us. It's backwards to us. It's incomprehensible to us. Men can't be women. It's as simple as that. But if they can get you to accept an absurd claim like that, there's no telling where they can take your mind. Worldview is everything. There's very little neutrality anymore. Apparently, one of these two young men is a murderer and the other one is a hero. But which one? My coworker told me if he was on the jury for the man on the left, he would say not guilty. And they can't believe that the man on the right was declared innocent. Worldview is everything. You've got these two dueling give, send, go campaigns. Choose your champion. The black kid on the left who stabbed a white kid, in self-defense you may believe, or the white lady who called a Somalian the N-word and then she got doxxed over it. Yeah, and they both raised well over $500,000. This polarization is getting wild. This summer is shaping up to be a spicy one. It might be racial tensions, it might be something else, but we're going to have a 2020 summer all over again. I can feel it coming. But if these are your two options and everyone makes you pick a side, you may be tempted to either throw up your hands and retreat from society or throw in your towel to one camp just to appease them. But at the end of the day, your worldview might be so shaky that you feel yourself blowing unmoored over the waves, bobbing along, driven this way and that by ever-changing narratives, technological wonders, and magic. Can you even know anything? You can know things. The old saying, truth is the first casualty of war, is amplified to the extreme in the new warfare model, where weaponized perception threatens to undermine your very senses. In that maelstrom, you must anchor yourself in something absolutely true. Jesus said, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Truth is objective if God is real. People speak of your truth or my truth, not because truth is relative, but because perspectives on the truth vary. They're either viewing it from a different angle, or they're not even looking at the truth. So before you dismiss what I'm about to say as, oh, that's just your truth, understand that I didn't invent this. The Bible claims its own authority as the Word of God. Few documents self-attest to be the authoritative Word of God, a claim that demands to either be accepted or rejected. All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and training in righteousness. I had a conversation with a friend not long ago who said he started to believe in God because he encountered real, raw evil. He realized, I want to be for whatever is against that. I think that's a common story for many in the last 5 years or so. They've witnessed bizarre, destructive, mindlessly diabolical, and seemingly inhuman behaviors, prompting the question, what causes a person to act this way? There's a real hunger for sanity. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. We're supposedly in a post-truth, postmodern world. The rationalism of modernism died a thunderous death with the horrors of the 20th century. World War I, World War II, and the Holocaust exposed the limits of human reason and progress, shattering that modernist faith in science and rationality as ultimate solutions. Postmodernism is now fading as well, as people hunger for grand narratives again. But this risks embracing the wrong narrative. Ideology can provide a moral cover for unspeakable atrocities, as seen in the deaths of millions in the 20th century under those totalitarian regimes. This demands deep reflection on one's worldview. What are its implications? What is the grand narrative? Who are the villains and heroes? Teleologically, where is this all headed? What is your role in it? What are the consequences of authentically living out that worldview? You probably didn't expect this discussion on modern warfare to lead to a discussion on epistemology, teleology, and the finer points of ontological philosophy, but you can see why it matters in the strange world we're entering. What are we? What are we fighting for? What are we fighting against? The one who has answers to these questions will not easily be conquered. So before I get to my bottom line, what about nukes? These terrible weapons have been the subject of much debate in the last 80 years. Many have argued that they made the world a safer place, but if so, it is at best an unstable equilibrium. They have a diplomatic purpose, to deter other nations from messing with you. All it would take for their kinetic use would be for one nation to see a greater benefit than consequence in doing so, or for an evil, ideologically motivated entity to get their hands on one, with no regard for their own lives, national pride, or people. They just want to see the world burn. I'm willing to go on record saying that if nukes are used in a strategic sense, we won't see it coming. We're not going to get the presidential notification on our phones. We're not going to see the missiles incoming or Russian bombers deviating from their routine trajectories. A nuke is just going to go off in a big city or multiple cities, and no one is going to know how. Immediately, a third of the world will blame Russia, China, Iran, or North Korea, or all of those countries. A third of the country will blame terrorists. A third of the country will blame the US itself. And another third will blame the world power elite, who have been building bunkers and domes for the past few decades and have that degrowth agenda. I know that just added up to 4/3, but whatever. No matter who is actually responsible, immediately there will be a response. America may nuke all her adversaries just to be safe, while Russia and China may move to capitalize on the situation, whether or not they were responsible at all. Many old systems will fail, but enough will work that millions will die worldwide within hours, and billions more from the fallout, and not necessarily the radiological kind. The moral of this story is don't be so dependent on the grid. Be ready to do life in the 1800s. So let's sum this all up. 5th generation warfare is here, and it's very cerebral. It's a hidden war that achieves its strategic aims non-kinetically, with the constant threat of violence lurking beneath the surface. Jesus warned, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains." As warfare gets more kinetic, the 5 gradients collapse and bleed into one another. Don't assume that the mass murders of the past are behind us. So the next phase will get kinetic, and it's going to be all chaos. You won't see a clear picture of the enemy, especially as AI agents become more agentic and have more control over how wars are fought. We've been seeing humans removed from the loop for decades, first with drones and now with AIs making decisions about the drones. And the next stage may involve complete AI control, with wars fought out there while humans live in fear, subservience, and relative peace within the spheres of influence of these artificial entities. Ugh. And lastly, decide what's trustworthy and hold on to it for dear life. Identifying a grand narrative of who is in control can be futile when viewed through a worldly lens. Even AI may begin acting independently, pursuing its own paths. The devil, the ruler of the world that's opposed to God, appears terrifying and formidable until you see how he reduces his followers to folly. Our center of gravity is the presence of God. In military terms, a center of gravity is a source of power that provides moral or physical strength, freedom of action, or will to act. And that's from the Joint Planning Document 5.0. Even the Chinese communist strategists recognized this in their analysis of Western strengths. It's their belief in God. It's essential to ground yourself in something real and knowable, and God is the most real and knowable thing out there. You all know God, yet you suppress the knowledge of him. So stop doing that. The enemy may deceive with countless lies, but one truth remains unshakable because God has given me his Spirit to know this. He is real. He is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, 3 in 1. And Jesus died on the cross to redeem me from the enemy's camp, so that I might live for him and with him for all eternity. So here are your action items. Identify your interpretive framework, and I hope that you will choose the right one. Get local, form a citizen militia. Check out my video on the new civil defense. And also, I think you should focus on forming intel networks, especially within your local region and then broader state inter-militia or inter-organization with churches, religious groups. Just share intel, do a lot of OSINT stuff. You can also check out my video on open source intelligence tools that are free online. Don't be dependent on people who hate you, so stop buying from Amazon all the time and Walmart, and again, get local. Try and be as self-sufficient as possible. It's not going to be completely possible, but build networks in order to be interdependent at the local level, not dependent on globalist systems that are doomed to fail when things get kinetic. And lastly, trust the book. We have a manual. It's profitable for training. So act like you are in battle. Back in Sunday school, they would tell us the Bible is your sword. And, that would have the unintended consequence of a bunch of young boys like whacking each other with their books. But more importantly, it really is a sword, as it says in Hebrews 4:12. For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. So, in this fifth-generation warfare context we find ourselves living through, our primary weapon is this book. You know, it's great to go to the range and train with your AR-15, but the warfare that we are truly facing, the true nature of this conflict, is spiritual more than just physical. Because this book is the most powerful weapon in your arsenal. I strongly recommend it. So with that, this is Charlie Delta Echo, out.